Welcome to the Nailed It Wall.
Welcome to episode 42 of the Nailed It Wall. We're back, people. We went on a little hiatus break. What would you call that?
I don't know. Regrouping,
A little home learning, adjustment, a little bit of craziness. This week, we're going to catch you up on our lives, what we've been up to, talk about the future, moving forward in education in Arizona. It feels good to be back, people. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to the Nailed It Wall. I'm Mr. Lane, the STEM guy.
and I'm Mrs. Scofield.
It's hard to believe that we've been on, I don't even know what we're going to call it, sabbatical, hiatus, like any other word you can think of, for almost 2 months. But when you think about those 2 months, it's also exciting that we were turning out episodes almost every single week for the past year, which, you know, it's a grueling grind in terms of our own personal lives and being teachers. And but those are things that we love to do. And, you know, our first episode was on June 24th. So it's like, this is like in our almost our 50th week of doing this. And, you know, we've churned out 42 episodes starting today.
That's just so crazy, isn't it? Like, it's truly amazing, you know? And I think it would have been so bizarre if we had not taken a break because, you know, a lot of life came at us, you know? It was a crazy time.
Insane would be an understatement, I think, when we think about that. But as we start every episode, we want to hear, how have you nailed it this past week?
Well, so past week, I mean, I think I can pull from anywhere from the last, 2 months, but, I had a really good failed it. So I was picking up some coffee. Actually, I was bringing you a coffee, and I'm not amazing at mobile ordering. Like, I do all right, but I stick to my same routine, and so I know my store. But I was not near my store. I was coming back from a hike with our buddy Jolynn, and hooty hoo to her. And so I changed the location. To what I thought was the Starbucks I was driving to. And I just happened to get out of my car. And like, we are both kind of on the same page where it's like, it's kind of a commitment to go into a store of any type at this point. Like, it is kind of like, I really try and not do that as much as I would have normally. And so I just happened to get out of the car and go in to pick up my mobile order, and it is not there. And they're so nice, and they're like, this is not our store. But they're so cool, and they made the drinks, and all was well, and I went on my merry way. But it's nice to know that I still on a regular fail it, like all the time. Fail
forward, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
And, I felt like the Starbucks employees have been so thankful for everyone coming into the stores. And it's been so good to kind of that little normalcy. And like, that's such a big, part of my life. And, the announcements, we'd have Starbucks every Thursday. And just to have a little Starbucks back where you can actually go in and pick up your mobile orders is pretty nice.
You should have seen how excited they were, though, when I walked in, because they don't have this, and I'm a people person, so I totally could relate, and I could feel their need for human connection, and they were so excited, literally everyone in the place, and there were like 6 employees, which I thought we're pretty stocked here, but they all stopped, and they were like so excited, like, thank you for coming in. And so I just so support your local businesses, everyone, because it's been a tough time. It
truly has. And, it's hard to believe that we're coming to the end of our 3rd full week of summer. We're going to try to come back every other week during the summer. So we try to do like a podcast every other week throughout the summer until we get back into the school grind where we can kind of go every single week. And the cool thing about what we learned about all this too was, we recorded 3 podcasts via Zoom. And
that was really cool.
Chris Woods, who runs the Daily STEM, does a Daily STEM newsletter. He was so awesome in helping us out. I'm like, how do you record your podcast? Like, when you're not together? We did one with me, you, and Tony, like all at our house. Joe Lynn, me and you did one together, all via Zoom. And, me and you were really good about the social distancing. We talked about before everything shut down. We were together, on that Friday or that Saturday and Sunday before spring break, gearing up to go to Astro Camp, not having any clue of like, what storm was on the horizon in terms of
Hashtag truth.
what was actually going on in Arizona. We're
Yeah.
looking at the number of cases, number of reports, and then we went a long time, without seeing each other. But it was cool to still be able to connect via Zoom and still do the podcast. And now it's like, if we want someone on the national scale, we know how to do that. And it's such a cool thing that, people are so willing to help us learn how to do that and how easy it was. And you're like, I got this thing. I'm like, I think we'll go with this Zoom thing. This is what he does. And it was just so awesome to still be able to kind of keep the podcast together, which, but it's also nice to be together for the first time, kind of doing this. And we didn't see each other for, probably a good month and a half or so. One day you came by with coffee, drive-through coffee, and
that line was long.
Yeah. And then you grab something there. So it's awesome how technology can bring us together and still be disconnected, and how many friends have connected. We talked about your birthday party, how cool that was, and all these people connecting via Zooms and Google Hangouts. Mine nailed it.
Wait, hold on. Can I just say something before you share your nailed it? What's funny is we had wanted to do that for a long time, right? Figure out the distance recording. But it's like you forget that when you're forced into a situation that you didn't, that wasn't an ideal situation for us, for anybody. But then you adapt, and then there was that really cool thing that came out of it, and it kind of forced us out of our what we would normally do, and it put pressure on us to figure it out. And so it was this opportunity to adjust or just have to stop, and we learned it was we allowed that to be a growth thing, which I think was really cool.
And then there's also the thing too is we're we got to keep this going through the summer. We started it last summer, and you usually go to California for a couple of weeks, and I usually go back to Maine and Massachusetts for a couple of weeks. And so we have to learn how to bring our stuff and record, and so we can be in two different separate places and kind of do that. So eventually we're gonna have to learn it, and with all this stuff going on, kind of forced our hand a little bit.
Yeah, but we rallied, and now we have this new skill.
Yes. Now, I nailed it this week. I had this under the sink. I had some water damage, and it's the thing was just like a black hole sucking in all of our cleaning supplies. I didn't even know it was in there, just because everything was being sucked in there. And I saw what kind of wood would you call that?
I think it's pressed board. Isn't it particle board?
Yeah, particle board, yeah. And then I was I sent you a message. I'm like, do you think I should just rip this off? And
you were really jonesing to rip that thing out.
I was like, I'm just going to tear this whole thing out and rebuild it from there. And you're like, whoa, cowboy. You're like, if you rip that out, it's going to tear out the entire cabinet there. So everything kind of goes through there. I didn't want to take your advice. I just wanted to tear it up, rip it out, and kind of rebuild this. And then I text my buddy Eric. He does a lot of these projects, and he's like, "Oh, what you got to do? You got to build on top of it." And and so I had to build this, brand new floorboard on top of it. You were a big help in the nail gun, the air compressor. And it was pretty, just one of those little home projects that you're super proud of how it came out, and
it looks good.
It did come out good, so I was pretty proud of it there in terms of our nailed it. Now 2020, it's been a crazy year. I think of we lost an entire quarter of school in Deer Valley in Arizona. I think of some of the schools that are just finishing up right now, talk about that grind and everything, and the toll it's taken on those families and teachers and people working, just how are they staggering to the end there. And so I feel like our kids were very fortunate in the sense that they got 3 full quarters with these amazing teachers at our school and that education, and they only had to experience that 1 quarter versus 2 quarters or a quarter and a half. And, as 2020 started, there was the big thing in Australia. We were trying to coordinate something with sheet maps of how we could support them. We did a drone conference with them at the beginning of the year. And then the fires, it was just devastating to kind of see the footage every day. Our man Lincoln actually went to Australia during all these fires to the Australian Open, did a great piece for our announcements. on the Australian Open. Is one of my favorite pieces of the entire year. Each day that he kind of like sent those back to us. And even when the home learning thing started, it's like so much of that had shifted from like the Australian fires, wombats. Tell us what we learned about wombats.
Oh my gosh, wombats are legit, man. Well, I think that's something I want to explore a lot more. But I had seen, I don't know if it was on Twitter or wherever, but they were saying that during the fires, wombats have these huge burrows underground, and wombats, as we now know, are quite large, right? They are pretty
huge.
Big. they're pretty large. You should definitely look them up if you haven't already. They're huge. I was kind of thinking like a prairie dog or something size, and they're large. And so anyway, they would bring other animals into their burrows, and it's like, I think that's such a beautiful visual for just anything that we've gone through in 2020 is like that sense of community and taking care of others and like that selflessness, and that one resonated with me. I was just blown away by that mentality, and poor Australia, they got shellacked.
And then wombats were actually accepting other animals into their burrows, which is like such an awesome thing that they were doing there. And then so who did this drunk when the COVID thing really hit and schools closures, they were doing like these daily STEM lessons that they sent to us, and they're like, we want you to incorporate with this. And so it's like, that partnership, like we were willing to work, help them out, down under, and I got so busy, I still need to respond to her and be like, thank you so much. It was just, such a crazy time that I didn't use that resource, and I want to go back and kind of take a look at it. But it was just so cool, like, that connection from the beginning of the year and what they went through, and then kind of like what we went through.
Yeah, and I think that was what was so, we value the community, the connections that we have with people, but that was like such a thoughtful thing. And like during that time when things started shutting down, what you did for your group of friends too, like putting together resources to help parents that were overwhelmed, it was just like all of these different people. And we would see on Twitter like people putting together like like a, what would you say, like a menu or what, like a daily, like just so much share resources, like we're gonna all get through this, like we're gonna all get through this together. And just that mentality of like being there to try and support other people was huge.
And then COVID hit. It's hard to even go back and kind of think about the beginning. It was our spring break, and we went into spring break believing we'd be back that following Monday, maybe a 1 to 2 week shutdown, worst case scenario. No way did we ever honestly think about the fact that school would be closed for the end of the year. And it's just such a crazy ride when you kind of go from that beginning, like where we were finishing pieces on Astro Camp, finish up the school year for your 8th graders, and then school was just shut down. And now it's like we're in that weird place right now too. It's like we're almost halfway through our summer, which is scary to think about, because it's like we were just like dragging to the end there, everyone's like, we can get there. And then now it's like, what is school going to look like in August? And you're a very optimistic person. I'm trying to feed off your positive energy. What is your theory of like what August is going to look like?
What I want it to look like is I want to be in person with the kids. And it's tough because neither of us are irresponsible people. It's not that we want to be negligent or put anyone at risk, but teaching, there's so much to teaching. There's a lot of components, but for both of us, the number one part is connections. It's the relationships, and it is so it's really tough on the kids, and it's really tough on us to not be in person with those kids to make the connections. Because like, think about that, because of your example, I greet all my students at the door as well. And in that second, when I see them at the door, I know what kind of day they're having. I know, like, there's so much you can just tell in that moment, and seeing them interact with their peers and just all of that. And like, and in 8th grade is a tough age. They're dealing with a lot. It's a lot of transition for them, and to not be able to be in person with them going into this school year is really difficult. And the extra component of that is I have my own kid this year again. Not that he flunked, but just different kid. I had another one before, but so like I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose that any part of that year. Because I've been waiting to, be his teacher and all the friends that I've seen grow up, really like all the time that I spent with your third grade class. I know these kids, and like I've been really looking forward to it. So I don't know what it's going to look like. What I would guess, if I was guessing, I think, I don't think it will go back to what we know. And that's hard. What I hope is that we'll get to be in person with them somewhat. And I mean, I guess if you think about life, you just have to say like, we're just going to make the best of it, and just hope that there's like a little bit of like what we're really, really wanting. I don't know.
Now tell us, how do you greet all of your 8th graders?
Well, what I did, so it's going to be a little bit different, is I'd be at the door and I would high five them, and I would and I always say their name, like, so again, connections, relationships, and that's like before I became a teacher, but I think that's also a big part of my dad, is knowing people and spending the time to like acknowledge them and show them respect and attention. And so for me, that first week of school, it's my goal to know all of their names like within a couple days, and I do a pretty decent job with that. But a key part of that is at the door saying their name, high-fiving them, and it's just, and when I was not there to do that, like if I ever had a sub, or every once in a blue moon, like maybe 3 times the whole year, I would be so caught up with like somebody needed my attention in between periods and I couldn't be at the door, and it would just throw their whole day.
Well, then so many times, like you would catch something in that one instant,
Yeah.
if someone not making eye contact,
Mm-hmm.
someone not smiling, and you'd be able to pull them aside and be like, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And like you would get that extra 2 minutes to, talk them through, be like, all right, let's have a great class. What can I do to help you?
Mm-hmm.
And now I remember you talked about, you're like, that's gone now for me.
It's gone.
So it's like, what do you see of, like, I know you got something up your sleeve.
I don't know. I've thought about it a lot. But I guess the thing is like, if I have them there, if I have them in person, I'll find other ways of, the thing that's crazy though is just a physical, giving someone a high five, connect, like people need connection, like, and it's something so simple, but like, those kids, they could go like the whole day and they don't like, fist bump or touch another human being. And it's something so minor. So like, I haven't figured out how to do that responsibly. I think Bonham was like, well, you can give elbows. I'm like, oh gosh, that's going to be so odd. But like something, I got to figure something out, because it is so crucial for those relationships. And you're right. Like, it wasn't just like, it happened quite a few times where I'd see it at the door. You could just tell someone was off. And either there or right at the beginning of class, seeing them in person and seeing them interact with other people. And then you just realize like everyone, you just never know what people are going through. And being a middle schooler, 8th grader is tough. It's tough.
Yeah. I know you'll figure out a way to solve that problem. Maybe
will.
a toe tap or,
So
something.
we do the foot thing.
Yeah.
That'd be something.
I know you'll come up with that. And what we talked about so much was, those connections, and, even through the home learner process, like the students still loved like those connections, like even though they weren't the same. And I think like, one of my favorite Zooms was like with Ryan's, like with his last Zoom. And shout out to Mrs. Willis and Miss Perry, who is going to be our 2nd grade teacher, and Mrs. Garcia, who's my daughter's 3rd grade teacher, and everyone, Miss Crew, the speech teacher. I mean, these teachers all adapted, and they did so much, and to push these kids forward, and I got to see it. But then like on I have a great picture of Ryan and his crazy hair day, and Ryan just had this COVID hair. He had the COVID hair, don't care, and I had to beg him to do like the man bun. I'm like, dude, we got to do the man bun. Everyone's gonna go crazy, and he's like, that's not a bun, it's a ponytail. It's like, he's got like this curly hair, so it doesn't morph into a bun. And Miss Willis and had this like crazy purple hair, and she had a purple crazy hair, and Miss Perry, she had, some awesome crazy hair as well. But then I just got this great picture of Ryan just like looking at Mrs. Willis, and it's like, teachers are the most important thing. It's like we've talked about this over and over. It's like the number one indicator of like a child's success is like that person you put in front of the kids. And just seeing Ryan look, with just such a big smile on his face, and every day, like, how she interacted with each kid, and it was just, you missed that part. It broke your heart that they weren't in person for all those hours, and it was like that little snippet, but just this one picture of like him just like with the biggest smile on his face, it just reminds you of those connections, and what those mean to everybody.
I mean, and I know you feel the same, as far as like, I am blown away with how much and how well the teachers across the world adapted. Like, you go from a situation where you have literally never taught this way at all, and you have to quickly digest, especially if you did not incorporate much technology or digital learning into your classroom, which is fine, but all of a sudden you're forced to do everything like that, and still make connections and still teach on. And I am really, really blown away by all the stories. And like, for us, a lifeline was that Krasinski, Some Good News, and so many of those stories were educators and people like going that extra mile. And you'd see a math teacher whose student didn't understand the problem, so they come and sit on the porch and like work out the problem and stuff like that. And it's like, it is mind-blowing what educators will do, because for us, it's not just a job. Those are our kids. And, it's super, super hard for me with my 8th graders, because, they're at a tough age. And so they kind of went off for a while. But my Zooms, like, we would sit in there and they just needed connection. They just needed connection and to talk about some normalcy. And it's like so awkward, because, I would say like, what'd you guys do this weekend? And it's like crickets, because like, what are they going to do? It's like the same things over and over, but they just needed to be there with me and with the peers that showed up. But by far, the best way to end all of that craziness, because it was rough on us, right? It was rough. Home learning, #rough, okay. But doing rockets with those kids and seeing how many kids did it. I mean, I had like, what did I tell you, 90 some kids doing rockets. And they were amazing, and so like, here I have this opportunity to okay, how am I going to do rockets with them? It's tradition to do this at the end of the year. I don't want to give this up, so trying to figure out how to do that safely, just give out all of the supplies, help walk them through, because you're building a rocket, and there's really specific steps, and because you did it. There's specific steps, and when you're in person, you can see, oh, this is wrong, so you just send them back, right? But you're trying to over Zoom and all these video conferences, look at their stuff and give them feedback and meet with them one-on-one, and all of that is just, and it was tough. Like, I spent way more hours at my phone and at my computer during that time. Like, I never took a break, because, kids needed me all the time, and parents were like trying to help. But man, rocket launching on those days was just one of the most amazing experiences ever. And it was just the best.
And the cool thing is, like, your biggest thing was like, these kids didn't get their 8th grade dance. They didn't get Astro Camp. The kids were devastated by Astro Camp.
Devastated.
So many of like your flip grids, like, to connect and give those kids, that student voice to like really open up, was this is all I was looking forward to. This is going to be my 8th grade year. I saw what last year and like what they got from this, and promotion. Promotion was a hard thing, and
so hard.
Not to have that for your kids as a parent, like you get that, and like, you know, so many parents are like, oh, thank goodness God this wasn't my, you know, senior in high school, or my 8th grader, missing out on those opportunities. And, you know, you got that little bit of closure, and you were just so excited to see them with, you know, engine pickup, and you're meeting kids, you know, you're meeting like families in the park and in the school.
I drove all over.
You're driving over to drop things off,
Yeah.
and you were building something, you know, like you still gave them that engineering part, you know, to finish the year and come in and see those launch. Talk to us about Kendall's rocket.
Oh my goodness. Holy moly. Yeah. So Kendall, her stepdad, again, I know it won't shock you. I'm hazy on the details about what he does, but in his job, he does some kind of fabrication, and it's a lot of 3D printing and things of that sort.
Awesome.
CNCs.
CNC.
He's going to be our contact for our CNC that we want to get.
We're getting a CNC this year.
I know. I'm so pumped. And so he asked, you know, I sat on a long Zoom with him and Kendall, and he really wanted to take this opportunity because of home learning. It's kind of afforded him that time to do the whole project with Kendall, but not with the supplies that I was going to do. It would be like they did it on their own with designed the whole rocket, all the components, talked about all of the different things happening, thrust and like weight and, you know, all of it. And her rocket, it's funny, they brought it the first day because we had two launch days, right? That sounds right. And the first day, he did not realize that the rod for the launch pad would be so big. But remember, we had used a smaller launch pad before, and then we upgraded to that bigger one, and it was way better. But, you know, we would
Were you
buy
still using the big one, though?
Yeah, still using the big one because
you had to use the thick straws,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, so what I would do is I would go and deliver milkshake straws. And I go to IKEA at the beginning, like usually in the summer, and I buy a whole bunch of milkshake straws because that was the only place at the time that I knew. Apparently they have them at like Safeway or Fry's now, which is a lot closer than IKEA. But I load up, so people would just stop by my house. I had them in a jar on the front porch. People just ride. I was like, my neighbors must think like, what is she doing? Like, so I just had all these people pulling
the ice
up
cream truck guys,
yeah,
like,
it's like so
go
odd.
get your straw.
Yeah. So, but anyway, her thing to thread on the launch rod was too small, so then they made an adjustment, and then the next day they came in it and they launched it. It was pretty cool. And hers had 2 engines, although I didn't promote that. I mean, I did not publicize that much with the other kids because of course I have all kinds of kids that want to put in many engines, and you know how, I mean, it's a lot of power already coming out of those engines. I mean, out of those, yeah, it's a lot.
The D12.7s, man, like
love those things.
Even our friends at Hobby Bench still don't know how we're doing it.
I know. Well, and then
they are not fans of us.
Well, and then they really thought I was a wackadoodle because when the launch, whatever, the igniter, I don't even know what you call that piece that you push to like actually ignite it. I had 3, and I had to work so hard to get this schedule just right. So, you know, in order to be respectful and do social distancing, every kid was issued a time, and I only had 6 kids per half-hour time slot. So you would come during that time, spread out on the field with me, then they'd come and help do the launch. But it was timed, and I have a lot of kids. I had 90 students launching in 2 days, so that's a lot. And so right when I go to set up and do the first launch, it doesn't work. That would be one of my big fails. And there's no way for me to know it's faulty because typically you and I are really good about, we always, for the fun of it, build rockets and then practice that, you know, get everything.
We do that with the kids.
Yeah, yeah. And so like, but I didn't do that because I was so busy trying to help
COVID
rebuild
as well,
yeah.
You know, and then, you know,
Yeah.
even my kids were like, hey, we didn't build a rocket this year, you know.
And Sam was like, I always get to do that. And, but, you know, the day before the first launch, there were a lot of rockets that were built incorrectly that were dropped off, which they wouldn't know.
Backwards.
Yeah, engines in backwards, like things that needed to be fixed. So Ella, Sydney, and I, you know, kudos to my little helper elves, But we spent that whole day rebuilding rockets so that they could be launched. And that's one of the things that you cannot avoid when you're doing it remotely. I can't see everything and know, and I couldn't keep up with where everybody was. So when they dropped them off, then I was like, okay, that's why I left a day of cushion to kind of see. But anyway, go to use the launcher, it doesn't work. Go to use the second launcher, it doesn't work. Go to use the third launcher, that doesn't work.
And Mr. Galligan actually ran down the hobby bench, right?
He went all the way to hobby bench. And now, mind you, I have Mr. Galetti out there, Mr. Morales out there, Swafford's husband is out there. Everyone's
Bonham
trying
there
to,
day one.
Yeah, she was there both days. And so, like, we're all trying to fix these because they can all see the same thing as me, where it's like, it's not user error, something is wrong with these. And anyway, so huge kudos to Mr. Galligan for driving all the way to hobby bench. Comes back, and but the funny thing is that when we were testing, when we sent him with one of the faulty controllers, we just threw batteries in. So when he gets to the counter, the guy's like, well, here's your problem. The batteries are in wrong. And so then it made us look even worse. But it wasn't that. That was not the problem, because the batteries were in. Because, the light comes on and all that.
And Hobby Bench is not a fan of us, both of us.
We're doing a good job.
The 1 year, again, these are rockets, and Dennis Myers from Hillcrest actually reached out to you, and they wanna start doing the rocket unit. Him and Maggie at our 7-8 middle school in Deer Valley, and they're seeing like what you're doing. They're like, we really want to incorporate that into what we're doing. And when I took over the 8th grade science position, me and you. We did the rocket unit ourselves, and we learned through everything. We just figured it out. And there was a point where you actually called Hobby Bench, and you're like, the D12-7s are too much. Mind you, I had already sent home all the flyers, and people have just been turning in hundreds of these D12-7s engines. And you sent it to me via text, and I remember it like yesterday, and like my heart sunk. But then I was like, we're doing it. We're going to figure this out. Like, we're going to use these. And shout out to Wendy Story.
Yes.
She was so awesome. And, you just talk about those positive people in your life. And Wendy's like, I know they're D12-7s. And she was so good at everything. And then, she rallied me back. And I remember I sent home a sway because people were still going to Hobby Bench to buy these. They're like, oh, those are too powerful for like paper towel, 2 paper towels, inserts, rolls. Rolls. And then like I made this video of our practice video, and I'm like, I did like my whole Tim the Toolman Taylor. Like I was like more power. I was like, and like I sent that, and then like one parent actually even showed them the video, and like I don't think they liked that, and then they got upset at you about like not giving them the heads up about like ordering like so many D12-7s.
Well, they still didn't want me to use D12-7s the year after we went to bat on that. But we tested.
They were awesome though.
But remember, like we tested out. So the first year we had a lot of stuff that we learned the hard, like because you had kids that were bringing C's, B's, like a variety of right. And then we realized, you know what, we like the D's, and then we kind of still played around with D3, D5, D7, kind of where we were.
But then there's also like one D engine that just like sparks.
It's
like
12. It's D12 0.
Zero, yeah.
Anything with a 0. And you had so many. Kids had turned in so many with zeros.
Like, legit, like there's sparklers going
Yeah.
up there. Like, I mean, those things would come down and like, ignite like anything in the desert,
Well, and we're on the baseball field, and I don't know how we got so lucky this year, but typically...
You had some great weather, though,
yeah,
for your lunch days.
But, like, typically, it's dry as can be, super, super hot. Like, the year that you were out there, that first year, oh my gosh, it was blazing hot. Remember, it was so, so hot. And then second year after that, too. But imagine, like, that's just like a powder keg, like waiting to happen with those sparks, on the baseball field. So we were very, very lucky. But yeah, Hobby Bench was not thrilled with us. But like, there's something so amazing about the tradition of kids doing the rockets. Number one, I'm sure you heard kids say this too, but like at the beginning of the year, even when I have Meet the Teacher and they'll come in and I say, you're going to build a rocket and stuff, a lot of kids will say, I won't be able to do that. I'm not going to be able to build a rocket. I'll probably fail that project. I won't know what to do. And they really have like no faith in the fact that they're going to build something that's going to be launched up. And you and I, when we worked through it, you realize like this is so doable. Like, I mean, we figured it out from we basically just looked at a rocket and we're like,
Yeah.
I think this is what we see in here. And we figured it out, and like, but their pride, somebody was, oh my gosh. Oh, it was Preston. He came for his launch, and it took so much to get Preston to build because he kind of went MIA. He's tough to bring back around.
I actually saw Preston the day before at the orthodontist.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you did.
We were having a long conversation. And,
And I brought over all of his supplies, got him his engine. He built his. His was a little rough. We had to do a little help and Preston with his rocket. But,
he was proud, though.
He was so proud. And he did that himself, right? He did it himself in a really short period of time. And when his launched, and he said right before it launched, mine's not gonna go up. It's gonna be horrible. Blah blah. His whole face, like he was just beaming. Like he was beaming, and he kept saying, "I can't believe I just did that. Like I can't believe I made that rocket." And just kid after kid after kid, having them, and of course one of my favorite was the Gillis family.
So tell that story.
So like
we love the Gillis family. This
Gillis
is a family like we've
Oh.
been. I didn't have Josh, Elizabeth, or James in third grade, but they were all in my Rubik's Cube club that first year, and Josh had done it like almost every year since like eighth grade, and then Mrs. Gillis, she's so competitive. Like she wants to win at everything. She'd always be the one checking the score, seeing what place. And every year we always advanced to the championship round. And even this past year, and so just an awesome family. And like we just love laughing with them.
Mm-hmm. They're so supportive too, right?
This is a great story.
I know. And I wish that I had it on film. Like I wish I had recorded it. It's so funny when people say on film as if we have like a reel anyway. But so they're out there, and they have been so supportive through the whole rocket build. And
even let me back up a little bit. Like even through the whole Astro Camp thing, everyone thought we were like so crazy, thinking this was happening. At this point, there's 14 cases in the state of Arizona, and we're like, all right, we're gonna be in an isolated area. This is before like anything is blown up, and every single day, like we would send a reminder on the private Facebook page or an email, and there's Mrs. Gillis, like they're pumping us up, like being like, oh, I just read this in Peoria, being so positive, and she was really pushing us through that whole thing,
Totally.
to really get to that moment, and like the odds were against us, but she was right there, like really even to the end, just so good about everything.
So good. And remember how emotional both you and I were when we saw their whole family during that caravan. We come around the corner and there's their entire family. And like for us, that's the thing. Like they have just been such a positive force in both of our lives, and we value them. And so they really, and it's funny because when I would do my Zooms or different, like I would do some of the builds through Zoom meetings, but then some of it was just like checkpoints. And so I'd put up an assignment and it would have the video, and then they were supposed to attach a picture or a video depending on what the step was. And my kids were kind of all over the place. Like they weren't always great about doing a picture, but they'd move on to the next. So like the Gillis kids, I actually didn't know where they all finished. I would I met with Elizabeth at one point, and I could see the boys in the background, and they and I was like, how are they doing? She's like, they said they're fine. So I was like, we'll just see what happens when they get there. And so they show up, and not only do all three of the kids and you have their rockets, but then Dad Gillis made one
disappointed
too.
in Mom Gillis not building
I
mine.
know. I really am too. I should have. Had I known, like I had an engine for her, I should have forced that. But it was almost so perfect that it wasn't, right? Because it was just like so. Elizabeth, they go. I don't even remember which order it was, but it was like epic, like all of their rockets. So I want to say Elizabeth.
I think you went Elizabeth. Elizabeth, Josh, and then James.
That's what I
think you said
was.
James had this really awesome one.
His was so good. And and each of them, I was just like, in their pride, their face is just like so happy. And then here comes the dad, and so he's like, he's kind of swaggering up there, and he's like, he's gonna school the kids, whatever. And we didn't have a lot of fails in our rockets. We really didn't have a lot of fails. And his does this crazy launch, like sideways. It's like a total dead. And their faces, like his face and the kids' faces, like they just couldn't stop laughing, and it was like the most amazing thing. And everybody was just giving him so much grief and stuff, and it was like so perfect,
And I love that, because it's like, how much of connections were lost, but it's like they're always going to have that family memory, and like, how much we love that family and those kids. And when you told me that story, I was like, that is just like the best ending right there.
It really was.
It was a truly great story. I'm glad you remembered it, because I would have never remembered that story. Now, a big thing with your rockets are like their themes. Like, what were, they do some awesome like artwork on them.
COVID's kind of tough for that. The problem is I wouldn't say a lot of them had really amazing themes compared to other years, because they had such limited access to supplies. When we do rockets at school, there's at least definitely a full day, but a lot of times like 2-3 days where they have access to spray paint and all kinds of paint, and people share supplies. But because kids were so isolated, and I think about it, when we were doing rockets, people still weren't going out to stores. I feel we were still shut down, right? I think we were still I don't remember what the words are, whatever. So they did a remarkably good job, because they had such limited supplies. They were so creative. Some of my favorites, I loved the Big Bird one. And I'm like so blanking, because there were some really good ones, but that one was really, really special to me.
I think the big thing you talked about was like so much of those designs are created out of them being together and pushing each other like in the classroom.
When you see other kids.
Yeah.
When you see other kids, then you're like, and actually when the kids came and they saw just the kids that were timed the same as them, they said, I kind of wish I would have done more with my rockets, and that was just like a small little fraction of it. But one that I really was blown away was Avery's. Avery, because she was trapped in her house, she took Sharpie markers and she did this elaborate black and white design, the entire rocket. It was gorgeous. And she was like, people were looking at that and they said, oh my gosh, she's like, yeah, it took me forever. It was like an hour. I'm like, an hour? It'd take me months. Like, it was spectacular. So the kids that put that time and effort into it, actually, Summer did one too. I want to say she did a tribute maybe to Kobe. I can't remember, but they really did a good job. But that's the thing. That's one thing that took a hit. And you know what? Like, just the fact that they had, like, how do you, and I can meet people at the park and give them string and toilet paper rolls or paper towel rolls and all these things. I can't give 8th grade students cans of spray paint and be like, good luck,
Yeah.
Like that's a bad call. So nor could I give them box cutters.
You see the park graffitied up,
Yes.
and you're like, hey, those colors look familiar.
Yeah. So that was my dilemma, is like, how do I support the families and still like be responsible, because they really, how important the box cutters are to that project, and I couldn't send those out. So I really needed parents to support their students or their kids to just say like, I'm going to help. And I would say that when I met all those parents at the park, I said like, you need a sharp blade for this part. This part's really essential. But I had kids like I had. Did you have Jacob? I forget. Jacob H.
No.
He's just such a cool kid. But he sent me a message and he was like, listen, I just can't get those rings. Like, I need help. And so, just the fact that he reached out. So I sat, and you know what a pain those rings are.
They're the worst.
They're the worst. And so, like, I'm cutting out rings for Jacob. And, I left him on my porch and he swung by and picked him up. But it was like, it was such a community thing. And it was the only tradition that we could keep some semblance of normalcy for them. And it was really, really just so cool to see families come out. I mean, the entire Knight family came out, the entire Dennis family came out, and like their pride of like cheering on, like Mr. Knight's like, you better not embarrass me, you know, and like all his siblings are there in his face. He was so nervous, but it was just such a cool experience to see the support that these kids had and their pride in that. And it was like kind of a final closure because none of it, like the school year didn't feel real, right? Like there was no like natural end to it. And, you know, our promotion wasn't a promotion. We had to do, as all of DBUSD schools did, what would you call it? Like a virtual video promotion, right? And so there really wasn't like that, okay, now it feels like the end. And I feel like Rockets kind of allowed us to have that feel.
Yeah. And, you know, so much that we just got started, like, with the esports club, and that was just, like, literally off the ground. Like, we were, like, 3 meetings in, and it was just such great momentum. And our friend JD from the Levine School District, he actually did this thing with game night. So, like, Thursday night would be, like, Rocket League, and Friday nights, you know, we don't really support the first shooter game, but, like, he would do Fortnite Fridays, and so many of those kids were like, my cousin has nothing to do, like, can we play? Like, we would post that on Thursday, and the kids were commenting. He would do a good job in the live stream. You're yet to pop on the live stream here. And, you know, so the kids would be so excited seeing the live stream, and Ryan, you know, has been on there, and, like, you know, you were giving me a hard time about the time I was on the live stream. I was just, like, getting up, getting a drink of water in the middle of it.
Hilarious.
But, like, you know, the kids, like, you know, we want to get to that point of, like, teaching them how to stream and, you know, streaming as we go with other schools and everything. And, like, that's another thing that we've added to, like, our list of summer goals, you know, moving forward. And it was just, you know, to give those kids that connection, you know, and they were able to invite other people. And I was telling JD, I'm like, I'm nervous. I was in my Zoom today talking about it. And then all these other kids were like, what is it? I'm not in the esports, like, Google Classroom. And they're like, I'll share this with you. And so many kids had, like, the live stream ready to go. And, like, so many kids are playing and watching the live stream, which is such a big part of their lives, like, you know, not only playing, but, like, watching, like, these live streams
it would be
on
like
Mixer or Twitch. Yeah.
It'd be like, it would shut down because, you know, it would only take, 100?
Yeah.
And so, like, there were weeks that...
Yeah, it kind of filled
capacity,
up. And, you know, and JD did such a great job incorporating us, and, like, you know, such a great partnership for me and you.
So good.
You also did an esports conference with JD, and I sat that one out, and, like, I missed that, and you know, it was so cool, like, you know, how this is year one for us, and
so
how we're inspiring and working with other schools, and, you know, just during this time to give that to those kids. You know, it was just so cool that they still had this connection via Sierra Verde and with JD and Levine, and so that was a pretty cool thing, you know, in terms of keeping that momentum going. And we never got the Super Smash going, which would have been a big hit among our kids as well. They would have loved that, but, like, Super Smash goes into, you need to have the Nintendo Online account, and so many students don't have that Nintendo Online for the Super Smash.
Yeah,
so,
that was tricky.
And, you know, that's what we had in the club. You know, we had our Nintendo Online accounts and everything. Good thing we didn't activate all of our accounts, you know. So luckily, like, we still have, like, half of those, like, ready to rock and roll. But these are the things that we love and we get excited about and we're passionate about, and the kids love it. And, like, this is just the future of education.
Yeah, they needed that outlet. Like, it gave so many kids a lifeline, because if you think about it, like, I mean, especially even just our older kids, their whole schedule was thrown off. They would basically stay up all night gaming, and then they would sleep during the day, and they didn't have anything. So they clung, you know, they grabbed onto that because they knew they would have that connection, and it gave them something to look forward to at the end of the week. They absolutely loved it. And, you know, Mr. Bonham jumped in,
he was awesome.
Rocket League things, and
Keen's been crushing on both ends.
He's amazing.
And then so many kids were, you know, they were becoming friends. Like, oh, I know your name. I know your name.
Yeah.
And, like, so it's like, you know, the power of gaming and the power of connections and knowing who's who. And, you know, even, like, when we talked about this, we're like, all right, if you're inviting friends, remember you represent Sierra Verde. And we talked about, you know, that first meeting, like, the kids were on the edge of their seat, and we talked about how we talk to each other, how do we talk online, digital citizenship, what was the term you coined? I like
I said responsible gaming.
Responsible gaming. I love that. We should copyright that. But that was just such a cool thing. And then even with all that being said, it's like the announcements were such a big part.
They
like
were huge to all of us.
Talk about like what the announcements meant to you and your daughter.
Well, again, we've said in this pod alone the word normalcy several times, right? And I think that that's what all of us needed, just some semblance of normalcy. And like for us, like we're used to doing the pod in person, we're used to like our routine, and so much of that just got stripped away. And then
the announcements,
and the announcements were such a big part of our lives. And the hard thing about that is we did keep announcements going, and it was a lifeline
right from the beginning. Right
when
we returned from spring break, we're like, I think we got to keep the announcements going.
And thank God we did. But the thing that is hard for me about that is, what we lost is that group. And we lost a whole quarter with that amazing group of kids and their relationships and their dynamics and what they brought to the announcements. I mean, that was a loss for us. And Brady, like you threw out, because I said, I think Brady's mom reached out to you and was like, he needs, I don't know, I know she reached out to both of us, and he had Final Cut Pro, and you said, tell him to do an intro, and like within days, he did, and he had never played with the Final Cut Pro, and he made that, and it was so cool. And then because he did that, Ella saw that, and she was inspired and said, would you be willing to let me try and make an outro? And so that part was cool. But for me, the announcements, I needed something. Like, it's funny because when you first look at the announcements, like, a lot of times as your daughter would call me out, she'd be like, that's not morning. So I'd be like doing them at the end of the day, and like I'm looking tired, and it was a miracle if I'd pop into the shower or whatever. But like it started to be something that especially with Ella, and I would look forward to it, and then I'd get up and I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna like put my makeup on, do my hair, and like put on a dress. And like for me, I that's how I typically am in my normal life. But this threw us into such a weird place that it was like, it kind of gave me the ability to like say like, I need to do this. And we didn't need to do it, but then we needed to do it. Like, it was the weirdest thing, and I know it meant so much to both of us. And like for me with my daughter, it was a gift that and when it was done, like the first day we didn't have to do it, and I was like, oh, doesn't it feel so weird? Like, we don't have to do announcements. And I was like, you must be so relieved. And she's like, I'm not. I'm super bummed. She's like, I really liked that time with you, and I liked that we did that. And so that was amazing.
Yeah, it was so cool. Like how you'd zoom in on some of her faces
and
her words of the week, and just kind of seeing you guys have those moments to go back and forth was pretty cool. And and like you talk about like stepping up our game on the announcements, it was just so cool because I mean now we have an intro like made with Final Cut Pro, and like we both have Final Cut Pro now, and like that's another goal of our summer to like really dive into that. We have an outro, like Ella just started playing with that, and you talk about like where we start with the Lean on Me song. That was our first time using Final Cut Pro, and that came out a little rough to say the least.
It's amazing. It's so perfectly imperfect.
Yes, I couldn't say it better. And then Ella, spent hours and hours editing. Like, we gave a voice to the drama department who didn't have a play, and Ella did such a great job, like splicing all those videos together, and multiple videos, and it was just so cool to kind of see, what we did there. The Greg hunt. I still see the Greg Heffleys out there as I'm out there, idea. Like riding the scooters, and to kind of give those to our community and parents, and talk about my boy Radio Bone and how excited I gave their girls a shout out that one day, and he took a video, and how much it meant to them, and that impact. And like me and you talk about, I was like, we'll never know like what that meant to all the other people, because I love doing it with my daughter. Like I'd green screen it up, and I'd tweet it out, cool. And Doink would always like retweet them out, and we always talk about inspiring others, and kind of like what we started from us just having that creative outlet. Shout out to Mrs. Schubert, Mr. Galletti for just trusting us wholeheartedly with the entire announcements. And all the other districts, this is the way for them to connect. So like admin was put in that position of creating their own version of announcements that they were pushing out every single day via social media, Facebook pages. And we're looking around, and people are kind of putting their own spin on it, but it's like this is what we so Mr. Galletti kind of shared like what we were doing with our announcements, and that inspired an entire district to connect with those kids, those parents. They were celebrating birthdays, they were doing national days, and having fun with it, and seeing that face, and it's like connections aren't the same, but they are same, in the sense that you're still there and you're speaking to them. And, like at the end, I had all these awesome maker projects.
Oh, they were so good.
I would do Maker's Gonna Make segments to kind of share what students were creating. And it was just so fun.
Well, and I think it's really good, like for you with Z, when we start something, it's so good to show them like the follow through. And it was like, we could have just let announcements go. Literally no one was like, you need to keep an out. It was just us. We just decided that this was important. And then when we did, so many people, we got so much feedback about how many people were watching it and what a big part of their day it was and what they looked forward to. But for Z to see, like, of course we're going to do announcements to the end, because like this is what we do, and it's like this is what we back, and to see it all the way through, and like for her to be doing the joke, and and kids want to see her, they want to see these people that are part of their day to day. And I really loved I just loved our last week to 2 weeks. Your makers ones were huge, right? Like that was so cool to like be able to celebrate those kids and all that. And then you had that good idea about we did something with kids sharing their favorite memory.
Yeah,
right? Like
that was a great video that you did.
Such a good one. And then how I saw so much of our stuff we'll see someplace and we get inspired. And like for us, all the things we do, we like to be creative. Like we want to innovate, we want to like create, and like all that got shut down for us like immediately with COVID. And so to kind of start reclaiming that, because that's where we thrive, and so I saw that paper wadding up thing, and then I was like, I really just want to do this. And then like to see that come through, and then just all of it, like all of those things.
Like everyone had like a message.
Yeah.
Mackenzie almost like broke my neighbor's window because I had to put a rock inside the paper so she could actually throw it off the trampoline, and how fast, and tell us about like what happened to Summer with her phone.
Oh yeah, so and we've always had really good kids, like where we'll say like, and we're very spontaneous. The two of us are both very spontaneous, so it's not like if we come up with an idea, we may have to do it tomorrow. Like it's not like we need a ton of time to like mull things over. We just are like, oh, we want to do this and we want to do it like right now. And so we would thrust our kids into stuff all the time where it would be like, hey, can you have this to me? And when I sent that out saying I want to do this, they were like, when do you need it by? I was like today. Like, could you just do this really fast? So Summer was going camping, and she, again, it was last minute, and I was like, I know, but can you, do you mind doing this? She was like, yes, absolutely. And she had her friend, Olivia, send me a message and say, oh my gosh, this is important to Summer, but she just dropped her phone into the lake. So she can't do it, but she's going to use my phone instead. And would you mind if I be part of this too? And I can do one too. And like, I loved that whole, those are the behind the scenes that nobody sees, and like those are the gifts that we get from this, because you see the investment in the kids and like what it meant to all of them to be part of that last bit.
Yeah, and I think the hard part was ending all that, and you did a good job like giving your emotional goodbyes to the kids, and and we always said like we're always going to have that, we're going to be able to look back and there it is on YouTube, and some of those memories, where we can laugh and reflect on what we all went through together as a community, and how many people have reached out and be like, this is how we start our day. We start our day with the announcements, and and then I always talked about Mackenzie about so much of like what we do together as educators, me and you, with our Twitter page is to inspire,
Yeah.
but then also like remind people of like, you know, your actions are who you are, you know, it's everything that you do. And, you know, we'd be out riding our scooters. There's Mr. Galligan walking the dog. He's like, Mackenzie, not even saying hi to me. He's like, Mackenzie, I love seeing you on the announcements. Or it's Dina emailing me being like, I still love seeing you and especially seeing Mackenzie on the announcements. And, you know, so it's hard to teach a third grader of like, you know, like your impact and what it means to be the face of that. And, you know, so it's cool in the community, and you know, so many people are like, "Oh, I just love, not
So
me.
many.
I love seeing you on the announcements." Now today is June 10th. You know, it's coming the end of the third week of summer, and you know, Arizona opened I think on May 15th, so they've been open technically for the last 3 weeks, and every national news story is about everything going on in Arizona, the numbers spiking. And you know, you get to talk about these things, and you know, it's scary in terms of, you know, what is school going to look like in August. Even today we were on an email chain about esports and creating a West Coast league, and so much of it is the uncertainty of what is school going to look like come August. I'm trying to take some tips from you of the positive Kool-Aid, because I know my kids, especially one of my kids, needs that normalcy of being in the class, being with their teacher. But it's scary. It's scary when you think about what is going on in our state, and everyone's looking to our state of how we rolled this open up. And they even talked about last night that, you know, within 10 days, like if things do not like slow down, they're going to have to shut down the state again.
Yeah, that's going to be tricky for them. But, you know, that's the thing. You and I are lucky enough to be part of the district, I don't know, tech team, would you say? Like ed tech team or whatever. And the conversations that were happening, like a couple weeks ago, you know, just to kind of start figuring out, like, how are we going to support our teachers? How are we going to keep everybody on board? How are we going to, like, take them and bring them to another level of support with all these digital tools, with whatever we're going to need? Like, there's so much we don't know. We literally don't know. And I think it's going to change, you know, like you're saying, like there's new numbers all the time. There's new responses all the time. And everybody, like all these districts are coming out with their plan. But we're in June. Like, you know, there's still so much that can change. But what I do know is this. What I do know is that we'll adapt, and we'll figure out a way to do what we do in a new way, and we won't sacrifice connections, and we'll figure out how to make this work. I mean, we're all in this together. Like, we're all in this together. It's such a, you know, as you love to say, they're uncertain times, and like it really, really is. It is a really uncertain time. And I think for us as teachers, and you and I don't need to plan out a ton of stuff. Like, we're not like, we don't need to plan out every detail, but it would be nice to have some kind of an idea, right? Like, I think it even makes us a little unsettled, that feeling of the unknown. But I do know that we got through what we got through, and you know, I would be lying to say that it wasn't brutal. It was brutal. But we learned a lot, we grew a lot, and we're going to continue to do that going forward, no matter what it looks like. And I know that we'll do we'll do the best with what we have.
And I think we really enjoyed working with teachers from, you know, like speech, special education, and, you know, incorporating these tools, and, you know, like even working with Liz and Jenny from Legend Springs. And, you know, in that last meeting, Basil did a great job of like, you know, really pumping us up and giving us so much kudos of, you know, what we were able to give and provide those teachers through all those sessions, and the importance of, you know, there was talk about purchasing like lessons from, and then Basil just kept coming back to being like, it's those connections. It's able to see a face of like Rob, Jenny, or Liz, and send off that email.
Sorry, Christy.
Christy, sorry. Did I leave you out both times?
Yeah, just there.
You know, I just assumed you're beside me here, you know, and, you know, just, we loved providing those tools. But then, like, in the same sense, it's, you know, you think of like all those schools back east that just went through 2 quarters of this, and like the burnout, like, you know, like we love this tech stuff, but like we even hit a wall where like
Wow.
we didn't want to pick up our computer, we didn't want our Google Classroom to ding, and we didn't want to respond in that moment. And I saw like a national thing in USA Today where I think it might have been 20%. Yeah, I think it was 20%. 20% of teachers, like, if school's open, do not plan on returning to the classroom. And think of like how devastating if like 1 in 5 teachers do not return to the classroom this August in Arizona, where we have such a shortfall in terms of highly qualified teachers to put in front of those kids. And then now you're, and the risks are real. It's really the risks are real, and like you have to value your life and what is most important to you. But it's scary, in terms of you also like you don't even think about funding. Like so much of education in Arizona, Glendale has like a 10% sales tax. How much of that money comes from sales tax, and it's like, where are those shortfalls going to be filled in? And like you said, these are uncertain times, and we have no clue, what school is going to look like in August. But I'm going to continue to focus on the good, and I think our district has done a really good job of being very transparent on Twitter. And we talked to our good friend Dr. Chunas, and talking about we all want normalcy, and so many people on the news want normalcy, and they want this all to be over. But we also have to be very smart and understand the importance of wearing masks when you go in public. And I just think Arizona's in, it's a scary place to be.
It is. It is a scary place to be. But like, you're right. Our district has done a really good job, and they will continue to do a good job. And I think that all of this has taken a huge toll, and teaching is such a mental, emotional job. You're not punching in and punching out. Like, teaching is part of you. It's like inside of you. And so it just rocked us. And, people, like, I can understand why there's such a big group of people that have that fear about going back. And like, it was tough. It was really tough. But I just hope that everybody is able to take the summer, regroup, recharge, and find that spark that makes us do what we do, and know that like it may look different, but it's going to be okay. And as we see, like, there's a lot of good that comes out of challenges, and we can adapt and maybe be better.
I think we're going to end it on that. As we always say, people, if you can be anything, be kind. Now, if you loved hearing stories about rockets, if you loved hearing stories about how we nailed it and failed it and missed the mark, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Every Tuesday or every other Tuesday during the summers, the latest episode of the Nailed It Wall will be downloaded to your phone. Now, if you want to see pictures, videos, things that we are doing, make sure you follow us on Twitter. You can find me at Mr. Lane the STEM Guy.
And me at A Positive Proton.